went back to what brought us here. I have a few announcements to make. First of all, if you have received anything looking like this, I would like you to return it to me, and just to say that whatever you find in here, whether you agree with it or not, is not associated with the Pan-African Catholic Theology and Pastoral Network. So I'd like you to return it to me. That whatever is written in here is not associated with our network, and they had no permission to use our name and putting it here.
Bonsoir à tous. Donc, parmi vous, il y a des gens qui ont reçu cette enveloppe. Nous vous demandons, si vous l'avez reçue, veuillez la remettre à Mumbi. Et ce qui est à l'intérieur, si vous avez rempli ou signé, ce n'est pas associé au réseau, et ils n'ont pas le droit de mettre le logo ou le nom du réseau sur l'enveloppe. Donc, s'il vous plaît, remettez-les après à Mumbi et déconsidérez-les éventuellement.
And now for our sessions. The first session is going to room number 5. The participants in that session, the panelists, are Henry Sunguti, Beatrice Faye, and Martha Mapasure and Anini Dillon. And they are going to be in room 5, moderated by Emmanuel Boer. The second group meets here in the plenary hall. It's going to be moderated by Lillian Dube. And the panelists in that are Mary Zilani, Matthias Mulumba, and Sister Kevin Iliut. The third room is going to meet in room 6. The moderator is Eunice Kamara. The panelists are Esther Mombo, Margareta Gruber, and Daniel Franklin Pilario.
Donc nous allons commencer nos ateliers. Nous aurons 3 ateliers. Le premier atelier sera animé par Emmanuel Boyer, le deuxième par Liliane Doubé et le troisième par Eunice Kamara. Et pour la session du frère Boyer, vous allez au salle numéro 5 avec Henri, Béatrice et Martha. Et la session de Liliane Doubé, ce sera ici dans la salle, dans le hall. C'est Mary, Mathias, Mulumba et puis Kevin. Et enfin, le dernier atelier avec Eunice et Kamara sera avec Esther, Margareta et Daniel.
And just a reminder.
Pardon? Le troisième, salle numéro 6.
And just a reminder again that we're engaging in palaver, so it's conversation, not Q&A. And we ask that the panelists keep to the time assigned so that we have more interaction between those listening to the conversation in the initial stages and the people who are presenting the papers.
Donc, les ateliers, ce n'est pas une session questions-réponses. Vous ne posez pas de questions aux présentateurs, vous faites des commentaires et des observations, et nous demandons à ceux qui vont présenter de respecter les temps. Beaucoup n'ont pas respecté le temps et nous sommes désolés par rapport à cela. Respectez les temps.
So the entire session should last 1 hour.
En principe, la session de l'atelier, c'est 1 heure.
After which, we are going to have a break. Feel free to socialize and mingle. Dinner will be at 6:15, and we shall return here at 7:30. And tonight we are going to be celebrating women, and there are going to be several events we are going to participate in.
Après les ateliers, on prendra un temps pour interagir, pour reconnecter et pour explorer les lieux. Et le repas du soir, c'est à 19h30. Et pendant la soirée, nous aurons plusieurs événements prévus, notamment rendre hommage aux femmes.
Thank you.
6:15. Oh, pardon. Pour le repas du soir, oui, c'est à 18h15. Et on se retrouve ici à 19h30. Repas 18h15, 6h15.
To the different sessions according to your interest.
So, nous vous demandons d'aller dans vos ateliers selon vos intérêts. Ici,
The
Numéro
DJ
5,
can play
numéro
some
6.
music until people are settled. The DJ, please play some music until people are settled. Thank you.
DJ, un peu de musique, le temps que les gens quittent la salle, ceux qui veulent partir.
No, it's there. It should stay there. No, I just leave it. They'll adjust it when they come.
Them go open doors. You self go be a boss. Amen. Amen. Everything you put your hand go up. Your name go open doors. You self go be a boss. Amen. Amen. Every hustler getting paid. Where the hustle go come to pay. Your own in no go take. Amen. If you don't find work, do your own. God self go do his own, and flesh go cover bone. Amen, amen. If you believe it, say amen. If you believe it, say amen. If you believe it, say amen,
Okay, so welcome to our session. We are going to indulge, have fun, have a good discussion. But before our discussion, we're going to listen to our panelists, and they are going to start from Mary and go on to Kevin and finish off with Matthews. Let's welcome our panel with a hand clap. Please go ahead.
Thank you and welcome for our today's presentation. Okay, I want to begin with my personal experience during my pastoral work when COVID-19 came to Kenya and lockdown was imposed. After the lockdown, we started moving, and when I was going for my pastoral work, I could find women seated around the supermarkets, outside the church, and also outside different institutions. So 2 days, the third day, I got the courage to go and meet these women. Some were seated around where they had made a small hut for papers. And so they were using stones which they used as chairs. And so being interested to know what they were doing there, I went there, I joined. It was not easy also to bend and join them to sit on those stones, but later I managed. So after sitting there, they were able to share with me what makes them to be there. And they began and said, it's because we have nothing at home to eat. Where we were working, we have been dismissed. Our men are there, and there is a lot of crisis because we have nothing to eat, and our children are looking at us, and so we find it better to come and stay here. We are looking for a well-wisher who can give us something so that we can go and prepare. Many of us, maybe we heard of this woman who cooked stone one night because she had nothing to prepare for kids. And so she put the stones, they continued to boil until these children had to sleep, and this was the hope of this lady. This pushed me to write on revitalizing the women amidst COVID-19 in the church and in the society, a pastoral perspective. And so I begin by saying that COVID-19 pandemic has an uttermost impact on the women today, especially in terms of social, economic, cultural, political, and religious aspects too. At the same time, pandemic has not only threatened the physical health of women, but also weakened the mayhem on the emotional and also mental well-being of women around the world. We have feelings of anxiety, helplessness, and grief, which are on a higher side. And these have increased, and also women are not able to know what will happen in the future. This has led us to ask a question. Is there anything that can be done for women to cope with this reality which is at hand? We talk of social distancing. That has affected women, and that has led to many challenges that have also affected their spiritual growth, which also has affected that nature of communion in the church and in the society also. For example, in the church, you find that women who were able to meet in the church, maybe CWA, small Christian communities, such gatherings, some have stopped and others are minimal. And so in favor of the dignity and vocation of women, which is a subject of constant human and Christian reflection, and having gained exceptional prominence in the recent years, we echo the words of Pope John Paul II, who is a saint today. He says, the hour is coming. In fact, it has come, when the vocation of women is being acknowledged in its fullness, the hour in which women acquire in the world an influence, an effect, and a power never hitherto achieved. For the joys and the hopes, the griefs and the anxieties of men and women in this age, especially those poor, those afflicted are the same joys of all those who follow Christ. So in our paper, we aim at discussing the ways that can revitalize the life of the women today in the church and in the society. Our argument lies in a continuous faith formation and civic education for women to be helped towards healing, thus come back to normalcy. We are using the 4 dimensions, mediations of pastoral cycle, aiming at liberating the woman, which will help us, and especially the men, to act in their lives according to God's law or plan, consciously keeping faith in practice in empowering women. This will help us to propose ways in fostering care and concern for the women. And this will be towards working together in building a vital church in Africa. We are targeting the non-women religious. When we were in the field talking to these women, we were able to gather observations. For example, the widespread lockdowns that has been there and that has resulted in horrific conditions where women who are experiencing violence and abuse have no one to turn to, have nowhere to go. It has also fueled an upsurge in gender-based violence across the world. Isolation and vulnerability to the women who are being abused. It has also aggravated problems, putting women at a risk. And this is what we can call in one word, an annihilating situation, where women need help. One of the women we were talking to said, "My husband has left me struggling with our children. Wherever I request him to help, he doesn't want. And for now, he has gone, and we don't know where he has gone." And so you can see what is happening is really affecting the women here and there. It is also disrupting the livelihood and the ability to earn their living. That is reducing their access to basic needs, services, and also adding stress to them. We ask ourselves, but what are the root causes of all these challenges that are affecting women? Because as Arabom says, women are struggling. They have many challenges. And she says, it is a struggle to live, and often to live with precious little dignity. And so asking ourselves, then what are the root causes? And we found that women have been pushed to such situations because of trauma. And this trauma has been encouraged by the conflicts that are in the families, and also whereby there are no socialization as it was before, and though they are seated there, they have no one to talk to them, they have no one to run to, and so it has led me, how can we revitalize the women? So far, we engage ourselves to different institutions. Different institutions have had projects already running out where they have brought in the women to participate in managing those projects, and some of them we have presented there outside the art work, and also projects like piggery, like chicken, whatever, to help them to participate, at least to earn something, not to really suffer as they shared. We have also parishes that have also done that. And together with what has been done, we feel that provision of pastoral care and counseling sessions are needed highly because women are traumatized, are depressed. Also, faith-based approach to human rights is also needed so that women can be assisted. And also, direct income support and protection of women is also highly needed with civic education. And the last one I want to say is the paradigm shift, especially to the cultural aspects that are really diminishing the rights of women or not able to be respected. And so we need to overcome the cultural superiority complex, cultural pride and arrogance that is affecting women. So after we are able to do that, we are able to journey with the women, especially listening them, responding to the spirit of synodality. Women will be able to be empowered, liberated towards their peace. And last we say, may Mary, Queen of Families, continue to intercede for women. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary. Yes, it is right that we give a shout out. Now, let's move on to Kevin. And here we go. How do we go? Oh, you're going there. Okay.
I greet you all, my brothers and sisters. I'm Sister Kevin from Uganda, and I'm here to present the experience of my pastoral life in the slums of Kampala. And the topic that I wrote is about the battle for survival, the social, economic, and religious struggles of young women in Kansanga slums, Kampala. This paper aimed above all to explore, articulate, and influence by improving the lives of the younger women of Kansanga slums in Kampala. I will briefly give you the statistics. The UN statistics indicate that in 2018, about 1 billion people lived in slums. And there's a projection by 2030, there will be over 3 billion people coming to live in urban areas. And the majority will be living in slums, since it attracts the people of low income. How did I come to Kansanga? I went to Kansanga with a group of 6 young ladies, and we went for the purpose of study. I was pursuing my master's in education administration and management, and we got accommodation in Kansanga slums, and that is where I live with that team up to now. We started identifying the issues which are in the community and what was touching the lives of the younger women, the younger ladies. And one of the situations that some of us went to the slum of Kivero, and we saw, and I can assure you that that slum is 2 times better than the slum where I live. And one of the things that is Kansanga is known about is prostitution. When some of my friends met me and heard where I was living, they got scared and said, "Sister, are you safe?" 2, of recent, there is a very big number of teenage pregnancies which have emerged in the slums. And these young girls undergo various forms of abuses, emotional abuses, since the slums are dominated by very poor conditions, lack of good water, no good sanitation, and the structures are really a pity to look at, whereby you see a family of 5 living in one-roomed house. By the way, I also live in one-roomed house. And in that situation, these children, these young girls are emotionally abused. 2, the young girls are sexually abused by their own relatives, by drug addicts, because the slum is dominated by a number of young boys who are dropouts of school, and they move around, take marijuana. Those are the local drugs that they took, and what they call oshiza. And this type of drugs instigate them to do a number of things. Among them is rape. We experienced a counseling session, which we are still moving up to now, a girl who was sexually abused by her uncle, and she conceived. And that was a dilemma which today we are fighting. We are struggling with the church about abortion. In that status, how do you approach such a young girl? She hates this pregnancy because it was out of violence. At the same time, they are not given opportunity to speak out because their relatives whom they stay with, like aunties, they take it as a shame. So they are suppressed and they are not given opportunity to speak. The majority of these young girls do not attend school, but they become domestic workers. We have a majority of Somalis living in the slums, and they go there work as potters. In some instances, they are abused and not even paid. In this situation, there is a dominancy of delinquency in these slums, domestic violence. These young girls, these young children, look at their fathers. I don't know what they call, in Uganda now they call it marital rape, whereby a woman is not willing to go in for the sexual union with their husband because of respect of children. And so when they come, when they are drunk, they violate their women before their children. So this emotional abuse affects all spheres of life. That's why we call the social, economic, and religious struggles of the young women of Kansanga. In this status of the slums, which I wouldn't elaborate much about it, we do not have any trace of sponsorship or any project formed, but we decided, led by the gospel text, Luke 6, chapter 6, be merciful as your Father is merciful. 2, in the Jerusalem Bible, it brings it well. Be compassionate as your Father in heaven is compassionate. With the compassion, listening to this story, we began going out family to family, a time that we are not having classes on weekend, to listen to their struggles, to listen to their oppressions, to listen to their stigmatizations. And when you associate with the prostitutes, our sisters, even Sister Rosemary was sharing, our fellow religious, even priests, get scared and say, perhaps you are likely to be one of those. And the stigmatization which is there, the prostitutes are known. When we started associating with them, others would say, sisters, do you know the type of person you are? Yes, I do know. I know them. And when we approached this prostitute, one time I approached one and said, what makes you to do this? She started weeping. He said, sister, it is not my choice and I don't love it. I am a young girl of 20 years. I do not love this activity, but the situation which I'm passing through is forcing me to this. I'm jobless. I'm being sent away from my family clan. And in that status, in order to sustain myself, desperation, I give myself in prostitution for the exchange of need of money. What are we doing with these people? We reach out, give in counseling services within our reach. We do empowerment. What you see there, I asked our moderator to display. Thank you. To display, I displayed there. We began locally with the resources the pocket money would receive to make those beads, their necklaces, their bracelets, their earrings, with these ladies, first to make them feel love and warmth, feel compassion before we start communicating anything to them. 2, we began bringing them closer, the young girls, by engaging ourselves in sports activities. Netball, could go to the sport. It was a moment of releasing their stress, and in that process, we could sit down and speak at leisure, and we got out what they are experiencing. We do not have any resource, but we share with them what we have. And through that, no one of us was trained. We are using phones to get the tutorials from YouTube. We get to learn, and then we go and teach them. And how did we get money to do that? It is through our pocket money. We eat less, and we give them what they deserve. We saved the lady who was supposed to dump the child, the 5-month child, because she conceived when she was still in school. She was rejected, and she wanted to abandon the baby. We called them in our small room and offered the child the love that it deserved. At the moment as we speak, that lady has got a job in nursery teaching, and she's with her child still breastfeeding at 1 year and 4 months. And she feels she cannot remove it from the breast. And what are we planning due to time? Within our own reach, neither we are not getting any support from any governmental organization, not even by the government, not by anyone, but through support of other people. Father Stan yesterday was asking me, oh, you have a nice phone. We are getting those tutorials from a small phone that I had, and it would black out. Someone said, sisters, what you are doing is great. I will get you a phone whereby you will be able to download those tutorials and do them at a time that you feel to support our women. So when you see me with such a phone, it is not a privilege. It is a mission that I'm carrying. The plans that we have, God willing, one is to continue fostering education, especially I have now passion in psychology. Most drug addicts, the prostitutes, need to be going to the recovery homes and to feel the love and the warmth. But unfortunately, these homes are highly paid, and they cannot afford to go in that said. We hope that one day we shall get one of our own. We need to empower women by using what is available within their reach. And we do not go and impose them what we want. We ask them, how can we help you? How best can we help you? What do you think can make you feel better and happy person? And they give us the proposals. Basing on that, we reach out to them. We need to help them to discover their potentials, to discover human rights. These young ladies, they do not speak because they fear. They should not be intimidated because they need to speak out. That is why we chose our theological theme under Mary at the foot of the cross. There is a lot of persecution and pains going. And we cannot reach out to the hearts of people if we do not humiliate ourselves to be like them. Pope Francis said we need to go out and reach to the marginalized. We need to reach out and feel the smell of the sheep. I think this majorly was told to the bishops, but to all of us, the Christians, we need to feel the smell of the sheep in order to journey with them to the recovery, such that they once again feel that their images created in the likeness of God. Due to time factor, I've given a 0 minute. I stop here. Anyone who wants other discussions, please. These are the materials. Anyone can feel free. We do not have a fixed price, but if you want to take them, we continue working with these people who are highly stigmatized and who are dramatized. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sister. Now let's move on to our last speaker, Matthias.
I know many people have been asking me, which congregation do you belong? This is a question of prudence, and my neighbor here is so much. I have my Lord Bishop here, so I'm in the process of discernment to discover my true vocation. And perhaps I'm pursuing something new, and the church goes through, the mother Holy Church goes slow with the things. So I pray for your discretion of secrecy. Thank you.
God is good, and all the time. This child is dying on the cross. This is what we are looking at. There is real suffering from the part of this mother. And there are only few, 3 other people who are there for her. And where were all these followers? In our world today, in order to understand maybe better this scene of Mary at the foot of the cross, we go back to the garden in Gethsemane, where Jesus starts the suffering. And then we come to the cross, and then we look at the theater when Mary was holding the body of Jesus when he was brought down the cross, to get in touch with the suffering of Mary. Mary has become a symbol of suffering. We have Our Lady of Sorrows. There are so many names over the centuries in the church that has been given to Mary. I belong to a congregation of servants of Mary, and we look at Our Lady of Sorrows as our patron saint. And is given sometimes with a picture where he has 7 swords piercing through her heart. That's how much we can imagine all 7 swords in one heart. She's bleeding, feeling pain beyond imagination. In the church today, or in the world, we have so many people who are suffering like Mary. The pain is real, and they feel abandoned. And when you look at the cross, there is suffering and the love of Christ. Our mission is to give love to these people who are undergoing suffering. A number of situations can be recited. In Kenya, we are voting. They are voting next month. In 3 weeks' time, they will be voting. The last voting, there was a lot of suffering here. People lost their children. Everyone who dies has a mother who is left crying, young or old. There are so many people who are affected because of one death. An innocent person has been killed. The genocide in Rwanda in 1994 left a lot of crying, a lot of pain, suffering. I remember one time in the newspapers, I was in Uganda at that time, and the bodies were floating on the Lake Victoria and landing on the shores of the lake. And one day they got a picture of a woman, they were putting them in the newspapers, who had a stick pushed through her, and on each side they had pushed 2 children. It was painful to watch that picture. So here was a mother with 2 of her children, that was in the interpretation, with a stick joining them together, floating on the lake. That is too much suffering. Suffering can be from ethnicity, like here in Kenya, when people turn against each other because of whom you are supporting. In Uganda, also with political, we had elections last year. people were imprisoned innocently because they are supporting somebody. Some were killed. Some, they are just dropping bodies. Some have never been seen. They are mothers who are suffering. They are in pain. When you look at the land question, so many people are left, their land is grabbed, and they are left without anything, and they are suffering. They don't know what to do. This also connects with the widows. In most of our African cultures, when a woman loses the husband, she loses the property also. You may have so many children, they don't care. Sometimes you can be inherited according to the culture. If you refuse, you are now outcast, you are sent away. Where are you going with your children? You are suffering because you are a widow. Sometimes they are forced to marry men they don't like because of the situation. They have nothing, they are left crying. These people need to experience the love of God. Their plight is real. The minutes are running out, and I'm summarizing. I think I'm not a bad teacher. We have people with the COVID-19 pandemic. People were suffering in isolation places. Where you are staying was an isolation place here in Kenya, one of them, during that time. You are there suffering alone, abandoned. The people who died of COVID were being buried, not knowing that there are even people watching because they are watching you through the glasses. All this created people who are abandoned, suffering. Suffering has been real. We have people on the streets, children. They are abandoned. They are suffering. They don't have love. The love of God is so far away from them. They are abused by their fellow children and the security officers at night. The girls are sexually abused by whoever finds them. They are abandoned. They are abandoned by their parents. They run away from home for whatever reason. They need the love of Christ. They are children who are born disabled. They are abandoned. They are locked in homes. They are isolated. They are not mixed with anybody. They are just there, locked. These people need this love. This is our mission, to spread the love of Christ today to whoever is in a situation of suffering, whoever feels left alone, abandoned, is at a cross. Most of the time they are innocently hanging there. It is our mission to come out and give them the love of God that Christ portrayed on the cross when he was suffering. Both suffering and the love of God came together. Today, we are the ones who have to do that. In conclusion, the surroundings of Mary at the foot of the cross can be interpreted with the agony in the Gethsemane and the Peter as a call to humanity to recognize the suffering of innocent people among us. Many people have been abandoned, hanging on a cross, mostly innocently. Each person has a mission to be proactive, present with the suffering neighbor. All peoples are created in God's image and should live in dignity. Let us go out and give dignity to those who are looking for it, who have been abandoned, who are suffering. Thank you.
Let's round of applause to our presenters. We have taken our hands and literally walked us through a lot of suffering. We're not listening to stories that heard or read from books. Both stories from Sister Mary and Sister Kevin are lived experiences. Living in a slum is different from going to do research in a slum. Literally embodying the challenges, the fear, and walking through with those living in the slums. Being among people who are reeling from the effects of COVID is in itself an act of bravery. That's how I look at it. Now let's take questions, and not questions, let's get into a discussion which is prompted by the stories that we have heard. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Let's take those 5 first, and then we can move on. Oh, are those mics on? You need a mic, right? Thank you for that.
Joe Healy from Nairobi. I'd like to follow up on what Mary talked about on the small Christian communities. We have here in Kenya between 45,000 and 50,000 small Christian communities. During the COVID lockdown, they all stopped meeting physically, but thousands of them started meeting online using WhatsApp, Skype, Zoom, and Google Meets. And what I found most interesting in our research about women, poor women coming from informal settlements, they found WhatsApp the best because it's the cheapest. And they found those small Christian communities online support groups. So it wasn't just the Bible reading, which was very important, but there were support groups for themselves when they were sick, when they had deaths in their family, and they really felt the small community was supporting them and concerned about them, even helping them with material aid. So this was the small Christian community model of church in action.
Thank you very much. My name is Reverend Father Paul Otakagu, a Nigerian priest studying at Hekima University College here in Nairobi. It is true that there's no doubt that poverty is in some of these impoverished environments, like the slum our dear Reverend Sister Kevin walked in, is the consequence of sexual-based violence and abuse, like rape, and other related crimes like prostitution and drug addiction that continue to fuel this ugly phenomenon. Your network is already doing much towards mitigating these sexual-based violence and abuse and the likes. I believe that the church should do more in this regard. The church should indeed feel the smell of the sheep that are also created in the image of God. I believe that the church can still find a way of partnering with some international organizations like the UNICEF, World Health Organization, International Court of Justice, and so on. Owing to the fact that, as the scripture in John 15 and Exodus 18:18 made it clear that you cannot do it alone. How can the church influence these international organizations, and some non-state actors and international non-governmental organizations to provide for these vulnerable individuals that are easily lured into drug addiction, prostitution, and other sexual-based abuse. I guess that this should be a question that should continue to engage our consciousness, because, as the saying goes, train a man, you have succeeded in training an individual, but train and fend for a girl, you must have succeeded in training a nation. Thank you.
Let's try and limit our time to just 1 minute to allow for others to share their thoughts.
I'm Father Emmanuel Chimombo, the pastoral coordinator for AMESEA. I was touched by your presentations, the three of you, and more especially the first Kevin and Mary. You talked about COVID, the post-COVID effects, but also the challenges that came afterwards following the repercussions of COVID. Now, I was touched with the aspect of rape that accompanied COVID experience. As a pastoral coordinator, with the research that I found through fellow pastoral coordinators, I discovered that rape was really rampant, especially in informal settlements, and more especially incest, where fathers had sexual relations with their daughters and brothers with sisters. I was not sure about mother and sons, but I heard about these two. Now, the most painful thing was, out of these, some of them resulted into pregnancy. COVID has ended, but there are children who will be born out of that incest, and they're living. And I know one of you was questioning about abortion and the like. Of course, once life has begun, we don't have control, because it is under God's hands. So, question of abortion, as Christians, as Catholics, is out. Life has begun. Now, the families will live with this child. How do we look at them, and how do we provide counseling? First, to the father, who is ashamed because has to live with this child born out of incest. The mother, who has to grapple with the situation. And even the children, who will be laughing stock to say they have a brother or a sister who is born out of incest. So this is the challenge that I've been meeting as a pastoral coordinator, and the challenge is still there. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm Sister Jean, and thank you for this afternoon presentation. And my comment goes back to Sister Mary. Yes, COVID came. Paradigm shift, you said, about the culture. Women were seen as if they are the one to provide. No wonder they were leaving the houses and going to look for food. And Father has also answered what I wanted to say. Men were left home raping their daughters, drinking, even sodoming their sons. And this is true because I worked in one of the slums during the COVID-19 for almost 2 years, and we found out these. And a lot of abortions went on, sister, and also a lot of transactional sex. Sex for food, sex for pads. And also girls were trained at the early age of 9 years to go to the city for prostitution. They were able to be given makeups and they went out for prostitution because they were also supposed to feed. In your pastoral cycle coordination, how are we going to help these people that were left wounded? They are still wounded up to today. As Father is saying, COVID went and still that is an impact. And my sister Kevin, courage, you are doing what Jesus did with the prostitutes. His own disciples almost rejected him, looked at him as if he was part of that. But at the end of the journey, there'll be light. And I think you're taking a risk, but courage for what you're doing. Because I think somebody said, we might think as religious priests with religion will be first in heaven. But these guys might make up the first people in heaven because they know what they are going through. Thank you very much.
Thank you. After those two at the back, can you please bring the mic to the front?
Okay, my name is Faith Moeni. I just want to give a comment to Father Mathias and a question. You are always talking about giving love of the Christ to the people. And you are talking about the poor, the suffering, and all the people of which kind. But all the presentation of today and yesterday, there is these people you are left in house, the deaf and the dumb. These people are really suffering, especially in the church. Also in the Catholic Church, we all consider about the sacrament of the reconciliation, which is the most sacrament which gives us peace. But these people, I pity them, they don't receive. When you go to the parishes, you can't find any father who can give these people the sacrament of reconciliation. Even in the churches, no people should interpret for them. They don't hear, they can't talk. How are you planning to help them? You are talking about the black. How can we show these people love? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Do you want to just say who you are? I can see you look like you're in uniform, right?
My name is Faith Moeni. I'm just a student here.
Okay, my name is Mercy Mumbi. I want to pose a question to Mathias. We are talking about abandonment and treatment on the cross. Your presentation was well presented, and I appreciate you for that. But my question is this one. We are talking about abandonment. There we go to the village. You find they all have been abandoned. Their family members have abandoned them. There is no one to care for them. I remember the quote of St. Teresa, whereby she said that the most disease affecting the people of the earth is abandonment and lack of showing love to them at their own age. These people have no people to show them love, they have no people to care for them, and they have been abandoned, and they are lonely there at home. How can we help them and they are still struggling with their own diseases at their old age, and yet we are saying we are coming to show them compassionate and love through the reconciliation of Jesus Christ at the cross. Thank you.
Can you please bring the mic to the front?
Thank you. I'm Bishop Stembele Sepuga from South Africa. And I just want to comment about this phrase of Pope Francis, that the church must have the smell of the sheep. And quite often when this statement is made, it is made in reference to priests and religious. And also judging by the form of the participants here, they are mainly religious and priests. And they are doing good job. I'm in full admiration of what they are doing, and would like to thank them for that. But I am worried about the extent of our success in this, taking the smell of the sheep, that it seems to be concentrated on priests and religious, because we only form a small portion of the church. It would have been good if it was possible that we also had an evidence of the bigger portion of the church, who would therefore guarantee more effectiveness on the church having the smell of the sheep rather than a few of us. And I do beg that when we talk about this smell of the sheep, it ceases to be a point that is referred to only priests and religious, because I don't think that is what the Pope intended. Thank you very much.
We are going to take two more questions or comments. Oh, no. We have a few more hands up. So can we start from that end? You go to sister, then, you're there already?
Yes.
Okay. So 1, 2, 3, and 4. I think we have to cut it after that.
Thank you very much, our presenters. I was actually touched by all the presentations simply because we are not talking about something there, speculating, something concrete. It's about life. It's really touching. I was, however, left wondering if maybe these experiences are perhaps provoking a different way of looking at the whole thing, the approach especially. Could we think of a family-centered approaches within the setup of the small Christian communities? Like here in Amesea, it's the way of being church. I think one of us has just mentioned. But are we seriously thinking about this? Because we are identifying concerns, challenges, but when we come to the solutions, it's like we just focus on the victims, forgetting that the families are first and foremost affected. But it has to be within the setup of the small Christian communities in the sense that the families in the neighborhood, but again making all these the concerns of the parishes, understanding them as a people. Bishop here has clarified on the aspect of smelling the sheep. It's not just the leaders, the bishops, the priests, the religious. It is these people together smelling. And the sheep now is these victims. It's all of us. So I'm just left wondering, but I'm thinking hard if we can really do this. I'm from Tanzania. People talk about slums here in Kenya. And you know, Kenya is richer than Tanzania. But we don't speak about slums in Tanzania. We don't have this. Even when you talk about all these experiences, because in most cases, the family comes. Even in the solutions, the family is part of the process towards the solution. And it works. I think when we think of the church as family, especially in Africa, fortunately, the first synod has talked about the understanding of the church as family. I was just thinking broadly like that, but I think it is time to rethink about our approaches to these very concrete kind of experiences, so much so that we are really family, the people of God, and that is the theology we were told even in the first input yesterday. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing your thoughts. I think we'll take the last 3 now. We have to cut it. So there was a hand right in the corner, and then there are 2 hands right here.
Thank you for the opportunity. In the morning, I wanted to say something. I think it's coming back again. Amidst all this work that the women are doing to change the lives of many people, and in the light of working together, I just want to suggest, if it is possible, next time we have this kind of congress in a particular place and there are research, it will be good to bring some of these people who have been redeemed to speak for themselves. It will be very nice, because we are doing these things, we don't even know where they are. But if we invite them and they join us, I think it will really make a deep sense of synodality, inviting them also to associate with us. That's number one. Number two is that women, religious women, even those who are mothers, we are doing a lot. But I'm worried about the negative representation of women by women. And I'm asking, what can we do ourselves? Majority of us here are teachers, we're theologians, we're women, and men as well. How do we help the society to change the negative image about women? I'll give you a very good example. The way our young people are dressing, the things they do that are not correct. And that repeats itself. Women are these, they are the one that moves around naked. The women are tough, they are the wicked ones. Yesterday during the solo soprano entertainment in the evening, you saw what the musician, the representation of women. If you can remember what happened yesterday, and I asked him, what do we do? How can we? We can begin to reflect on this, from the family, going to the school, to the religious life. What do we do to change our name, especially the negative representation of us, to positive? Thank you.
Thank you. Let's keep it very, very short if you're going to take the other two. Otherwise, we are running out of time. Thank you for your comments.
I'm Sister John Paul of the Daughters of Divine Love. Yeah, thank you so much for the presenters. My comment goes to Mr. Matthias. When you mentioned about culture in our society, women inheritance, and the pains of denial. And we know that culture is made for women to keep, not men. Then why should we continue dwelling in that culture when the people that came about it and established it have died centuries ago? And we carry on that burden and pain and be inflicting it on women. Why? Yes. So men, most of the times, they take advantage because of the nature of women. It will not take much from us to drift from this issue of culture, because those people that established it, we go down history, they were rude, they were greedy, they killed even their brothers and took their land, their wives and children.
Sister, can I interrupt and ask you to just wind it up, please?
Okay. So that is my own concern, that we should try as a society and live that and embrace a more better culture. Thank you.
Well done, presenters. My name is Elizabeth. I am a student of choir, and I just want to appreciate Sister Kevin. I just felt like you have so much, one person. The prostitutes, drug addicts, young mothers, and another one, I don't remember now. But I feel like there are too many for you. I don't know whether it will be a good idea to find others who have been doing the same thing, so that you get a lighter group to be with, either prostitutes or drug addicts or young mothers, because that's really a big task that is ahead. Perhaps a, what do you call it, focus group. Focus. Thank you.
Thank you very, very much for all your comments. I think we have huge takeaways standing by the cross or at the cross, scared, vulnerable, and being challenged to move on to do something. I like the suggestion that came from my brother Bishop from South Africa. How do we get to challenge and to encourage compassion and this kind of courage to filter through the body of Christ? So as we stand by the cross scared, we still get to move and do something. It's about faith, putting our faith into practice, yeah? Thank you again. Our presenters, do you want to say one last thing as we wind it up?
Thank you. Thank you for your comments. Some of them are reflected, and especially when we talk of what is happening with men when women go out. Already we have begun now to journey with people, those who are really affected, traumatized. Personally, I've dealt with some, and some are doing well. And as I had said, there are some here outside who have been empowered, and they are selling those bags there outside. So something has been done, and still we are engaging people to see the way out. About the small Christian communities, already we have encouraged. Some have gone, in fact, on site, and they are doing well. What is remaining is to encourage them to join the online groups. So something already is done, and we pray that, especially when we are talking about the ongoing formation, the pastoral care, it should not only be in books, but to be practical, and people to be there with the people to smell that smell of the sheep, because it's not to go and see the sheep as it is said, but really to smell that what is happening with the people today. Thank you.
Thank you again, and don't feel obliged to answer questions that came through as questions. This is a palaver, so.
Thank you for your comments, your supplements. I think I have two issues to address. One from our brother priest is about focusing on family. And I think that is what the Pope has been emphasizing, a family as a basic unit of the church. And that is where life begins. That's where we get vocations to priesthood, religious life, and that's where we get vocations to marriage. But unfortunately, in our context of Uganda, I cannot say the statistics, but the majority of the families are mother-headed families. You find mothers with their children, but we don't know where the fathers are. They come in church, but we do not know where their fathers are. And I think it is a challenge to all of us to see how do we strengthen the value of the family and how to make it important, because the majority of the young girls feel they want to get their children but minus living with the husband. How are we going to strengthen this value of having a family? So it is a challenge focused to all of us. But as I know, in the context of mother-headed families are the majority. Then too, sister, is true, it is overwhelming. I'm not alone. We are a team of 6, although majority of us are still in school. I'm not alone. Then too, we're also working in a way of involving the parish. Although through the basic Christian communities of catechists and priests, they say they do not have the time. But we pray that as time goes, as Pope Paul VI says, we are to be more of witnesses than teachers. And that is how our influence will be felt. Thank you.
Yeah, I think I had 2 direct questions from Wen and her friend. When I was presenting, I talked about I could not list all the people who were abandoned, but I mentioned people who are handicapped, and that brings in when you are saying about those who are neglected with the physical challenges with their bodies. And also the old people at home, they are also abandoned. No? The list is long and everybody can be included. And then another question was, what is the church doing about that? The church, I teach canon law, and in canon law there is the teaching office of the church. There is a book on teaching, which regulates preaching, missional activity, and in that book of canon law, a section covers the church tells us to find a way of preaching the gospel to the people who are challenged. So the church already has done something. It is us to implement. For example, the deaf. There are so many. They need pastoral care, special pastoral care that should be provided by the pastor. Around here, around Nairobi here, I know of a number of parishes, because I go there to celebrate Mass. They have put people who know sign language. So when these deaf people come, they sit at a certain area, and they have people do the sign language to them so that they follow. There is also a church in Karen, I know, in Regina Cherry. I'm summarizing, because Regina Cherry, where there are children who are handicapped, and one of the mothers told the parish priest, for me, I will be with these children and give them some catechism to let the mothers pray. So it is there. To my sister here from the Divine Love, I was not advocating for culture. I just mentioned that there are people who suffer because of culture. Now, when we see them, it is our mission to show them the divine love that they need. But I'm not advocating for that culture. But there are people who are suffering because there are different aspects whereby culture is dehumanizing our dignity. You know? So in those situations when we see them, let us come out and show divine love to these people, to alleviate their suffering, and to accept, to see God working in their life. Thank you.
Thank you again. Discussions.